Hey everybody, welcome to Highway to Hoover. As you might have noticed, I am not Joe Healy, but I think I've got a pretty good substitute here. You got big shoes to fill today, as I'm here with Jay Johnson, head coach of the LSU Fighting Tigers and defending or reigning national champions. So Jay, welcome to the show. Thanks for spending some time with us today.
Always good to be with you, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's get started. So, when you took this job, 4 years ago, or 4 seasons ago now, you've already won two national titles. How did you're making this look, I'm sure, easier than it really is. How would you assess kind of where the program is and what you've been able to accomplish building or I guess returning LSU to where it was years ago?
Yeah, a challenge, an opportunity of lifetime. A
Mhm.
lifetime is kind of how I looked at it. I've often said this. I didn't leave, not a good, but a great situation at Arizona for me personally for the SEC. I left it for LSU and left it for what I believed was the premier program in all of college baseball. Obviously, thanks to Coach Skip Bertman and an opportunity to take a process of developing players and developing a program that I really believe in and do it at a place like this with not just the resources, but the interest and having people really care about what you're doing. And they obviously care here a lot in Baton Rouge, which I'm really grateful for. And, the success is something I'm really proud of. It's one thing to know you have a good team or know you have a good opportunity. It's another thing to deliver on it on a daily basis. And that's just not just on game day, but in recruiting, in training. It's an everyday thing here, and great staff, and really proud of what we've accomplished, and excited to tackle the next challenge in 2026.
Yeah. So looking back at last year's team, there were, I guess, when we looked at it, there were some questions offensively if it would be good enough because there were some better offenses out there. Yours was good, but maybe not at that high level. How do you assess how that continued to evolve as the season went on?
I thought we were a really balanced team, maybe not a prototypical, top line SEC team in terms of how baseball has been played in our league,
Hmm.
for a number of years. But it was a brand of baseball like I was really comfortable with coming from the West Coast and felt like it could be successful and what I would call a really balanced attack. And we ended up having plenty of power. We ended up with, I think, over 100 home runs, but our ability to win games in any type of way or any type of fashion, I think was the hallmark of that team. And I've often said what you have to do to win games in the SEC is different than what you have to do in the College World Series. And I take a lot of pride in, building teams that can do both of those things because they are different. And I'm proud of how that team came together. I mean, we had, immediate freshman impact with Derek Curiel. I think he was the best freshman in the country last year. I mean, his quick acclimation to the top of college baseball was amazing. You look at that transfer group that we brought in really excelled. Luis Hernandez, not just offensively but defensively behind the plate, what he's able to was able to do. Danny Dickinson, Chris Stanfield's improvement from his time at Auburn, and then mix that with what was a really good group of returners. Jared Jones had a remarkable career here. Ethan Fry, we were finally able to get him healthy and get him into an everyday role, and he played to his potential. And then, sometimes you have to suck it up. And the year before, we had to suck it up a little bit, and we played Stephen Milam and Jake Brown, through their freshman year. And there's some growing pains, when you're playing Florida, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, all in a row that those guys had to go through. But man, we really benefited from that this year. And then collectively, I think we just played really good baseball. I don't know if we were necessarily the most talented group of position players, but you'd be hard pressed to convince me that anybody played better offensive baseball over the course of 70 games than our team did last year.
So on the mound, let's start with Cade. I mean, just a tremendous jump from a freshman. He was really a midweek starter. When did you see, and he turned into one of the best aces in the country. When did you see that starting to change for him?
Yeah, I thought he did a great job last offseason. First off, the character makeup is what I always speak about with Cade. Like this guy's really got it together. I mean, he's really got it together. And, we lost a really tough regional final at North Carolina, and we were a strike and an out away from potentially, being in Omaha 3 years in a row. And I remember at the end of that game, like he was the most upset of anybody on the entire team. And I just kind of looked at that and I was like, this is kind of interesting. I kind of like this. Then he went into his off season. He developed his strength. Him and Coach Yeski and Jamie Tutko really went to work and developed a slider to go along with the fastball, curveball, changeup.
Mhm.
Truly became a four pitch guy, which allowed him to navigate the lineup different ways, the first, second, and third time through. I thought he was probably the hardest pitcher to plan against in the entire country last year because of that arsenal. And then you put that together with the strength gain, he was able to get better as he went deep into games, deep into the season. I think we lost two of his 20 starts. And going through the schedule that we play, that's pretty remarkable. And that obviously set the tone for a national championship.
Or well, staying on the mound, I remember seeing you guys last fall. Lots of options, lots of velo, but roles were still in flux, and I guess they kind of continued through the year. But there were a lot of guys that got better. I mean, you look at Anthony Ianson from the early part of the year; he was a different guy at the end. Kason Evans, right, come in as a freshman and do that. Jaden Newt was a big piece. Like,
Absolutely.
how do how does that work where guys are just different pitchers in we've all seen where guys will come out and they look really good, and then the book gets out on them, or their innings go up, or their workload, they're not used to it. Instead, you had some guys that got better in May and June than they were early in the year. What's that process like to get them pitching at the best part of the year?
Yeah, I think we do a great job with pitching development. I think everybody has their niche. I think this is one of our niches as a program. By trade, I am not a pitching coach. Like, I'm not going to be the one telling them when to get the ball out of their glove and close their front side and all the mechanical nuances of that. But I do feel like I have a really good understanding of how to utilize guys so they can be the most successful. I think that's one of my strengths as a coach, along with understanding the player in the mental game. So that's kind of my contribution to the pitching staff. And then in Nate Yeski, I believe he's the best pitching coach in college baseball history. I heard something the other day. He and Tom Holliday are the only pitching coaches that have been to Omaha with four different programs. And Nate's the only one to have that and two national championships, I believe, with two different schools. And then you throw in the first rounders and the big leaguers and just a long run of success. I've certainly enjoyed being in the same dugout with him as opposed to the opposite dugout because we've had plenty of both of that now. And he's unbelievable pitch caller. He's an unbelievable ability to look at what a pitcher needs to do to be the best version of themselves and then attach what work they need to do to get there so it turns into output in the game. And then Jamie Tutko, our director of pitching development, is on the forefront of modern pitching development. And then Chris Martin, strength coach. We stole him from the Houston Astros, huge difference maker. Isaac Trujillo, our trainer. I feel like we surround pitchers with everything they need better than any program in the country. And I think it allows for a freshman that's as talented as Kason Evans and as mentally strong as him to come in and become one of the best pitchers in the country right away, or take a Cade Anderson from year one to year two and really improve him. Anthony Ianson, we don't win the national championship without Anthony. We were able to look at through six starts how we were utilizing him, and he was doing great, but we made the adjustments necessary, or doing good. We took him to another level, and he took it to another level by just changing how we used his pitches. And literally in 1 week, from not getting out of the fourth inning at Texas to the next week, Mississippi State. I mean, he went 6 innings, 1 run, real pitchers duel with Pico Khan and won. I think we lost one game that Anthony pitched the rest of the season. And so I just take a lot of pride in surrounding our players with everything they need to be successful. And then if you can recruit well, which you can at a place like LSU, hopefully we're turning into what people are thinking of as the pitching factory, because we're certainly doing that by design.
So changing gears a little bit, I mean, last season, SEC, phenomenal regular season, six of the top eight national seats, half of the hosts. It's incredible. You guys handled your business all the way through. But from the league, certainly the regional round was disappointing. There were some teams didn't make it through that were favored to do so. What do you, someone who follows this really closely, what do you attribute that to?
I think baseball's tougher than people think. I think in football and basketball, you know, big fast people beat little fast people. I think the talent is ultimately going to decide who wins, and that's not taking anything away from coaches in those sports. But in baseball, the pitcher has so much to do with the outcome of the game. And there's only 64 out of 300 teams that make the postseason. So everybody that's in the postseason is good. I think, being in the SEC, it's a double-edged sword. Like, if you get through it and just make the regional round, you won't see anything that you have not seen. Like, you are completely prepared for it. But I think there's an element that people don't talk about. Like, it can take something out of you. And if you don't manage it the right way, or your team's just in a different spot, I mean, you could look up and 24 hours later, your season is over. And that's just a very human being element of what baseball is. And so I actually didn't make too much of it. I looked at it as baseball is going to be baseball sometimes. There's other good teams across the country. I still think we are far and away the best league in the country. I don't think it's close. I think we had 13 teams in the postseason for the first time ever. There was no argument to me that that was warranted. And I think it will stay that way. And I think, that was probably more of an anomaly. I was one that was thinking like, wow, it's going to be 5 or 6 teams potentially, in Omaha. It didn't happen. And I didn't read too much into it, to be honest with you.
Interesting. So lots of change going on this off season. Your rev sharing, the additional scholarships, the smaller roster sizes. In addition, there's still got the portal, you still got the draft. All of those impact. What of all of those things, has anything been easier or harder than expected, or just your general thoughts on this?
Yeah. Well, it's certainly from a personal program standpoint, we got hit hard in the draft more than I ever have with high school recruits. And I think pro baseball just puts so much money into player acquisition in this draft. It seemed like it goes up every year. It seemed like it went up significantly this year. It seemed like they're passing around $2 million like candy, honestly, for players. So that's something I think, we have to be mindful of, going forward is like, that's going to be a thing. Like if they're going to condense the minor leagues, they're going to try to attract the top high school talent. Not that they haven't always, but I think they had a lot of resources to do that this year. And so personally, that's something we need to make an adjustment to because I wouldn't have fun 24 hours, losing 8 players that you spent, 2 or 3 years, recruiting. So I think just looking at it though, we have to continue to be the forefront of development for professional baseball, meaning the college game. And, when you line up against the great teams that we do in the SEC and the great coaches, like you're just never going to convince me that going and doing it on a backfield in Peoria, Arizona or St. Pete, Florida is better than Florida LSU, on a Friday night here or in Gainesville. And so whatever we can do to keep making it attractive as it is, I think college baseball is better than it's ever been. But it's been a lot at one time. I would love for them to come in and say, hey, this is what it is, and it's the same for everybody, and let's go. But just got to keep it adjusting as we go.
So what about the draft calendar, where it falls on the calendar compared to where the portal openings are? Then you got your designated student athletes out there as well. Is there opportunity to tweak those so that they're more aligned, or how?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about the draft timing thing. I do not want to go back to when it was during the NCAA tournament. And I mean, I remember a situation in 2016. We were playing a super regional at Mississippi State. It was a 40 round draft, and we're taking BP in like the 31st round, and I have a couple guys that have not been picked yet. And you could tell it was on their minds, and we're one win away from Omaha. Like that was not a great situation, you know. So I do not think it should be before the NCAA tournament is complete. I think we don't need to wait 2.5 weeks after the College World Series. The College World Series end on Monday. I think the following weekend is when they should put the draft. As far as the portal window, like nobody's going to listen to what I say about it, so I haven't really thought about it. It's one of those things I just like, what's the rules? Tell us, and we'll work within them to try to have the best team we can.
Yeah. You mentioned the eight prep signees who went to pro ball, but you did get at least four that a lot of people thought were going pro that are coming to campus. So how do you make that balance? Because certainly there are a lot of new considerations. You have smaller rosters, you have NIL, you have rev share, you have all these things, but you're trying to build a roster and maximize who gets, who's available for you.
No doubt,
How do you
no
do that?
doubt. It's tough. I think, I've kind of came to the conclusion like we cannot win a national championship without future major league players. And if you go back through this run that the SEC is on of winning national championships, there's major league players on all of those teams. And our team this year in 2025 will be no different. Cade Anderson, Chase Shores, Ianson, like all those, Jared Jones, I believe all those guys will be major league players. So you have to recruit at a high level out of the high school deal, but you're going to run the risk of losing some of them. But you can't shy away from it because it's my belief you can no longer win a national championship without those types of players. The transfer portal thing helps you age up, if you will. And, I've heard a lot of my colleagues, maybe even talking to you guys, talking about the importance of having an old team,
Yeah.
but I think the blend is the right way to do it. I love developing players. I love developing teams. We've had to kind of establish our own one and done model,
Right.
if you will, to compete for these championships. So I think it's just you have to stay a couple steps ahead in what you're doing, and our league will let you know if you fell behind really quickly. And I have great respect for all the players and programs, and it's a ultimate challenge. I don't think there's a straight answer all the time. We're trying to stay one ahead of it.
Okay. One guy I wanted to ask about, Marco Paz. He's been described as one of the most college ready pitchers that made it to campus. What can we expect from him?
Yeah, I think it's Marcos. It's a lot like Cade Anderson, where he had Tommy John at the end of his junior year of high school. Had that not happened, I don't think he would be an LSU Tiger. He'd probably be more likely to be a Detroit Tiger at this point in time. But it's high level pitch. He's right-handed. That's a difference there. But he's pitchability. It's strikes. It's mound presence. He's really confident in what he's doing. Starter type, profile. We're still in that 18-month window from the surgery. So we're going to bring him along slowly, but somebody that I think has a credible future here, has a chance to be a frontline starter in the SEC. And we were very fortunate to get him. And I remember when Cade had called me and told me, hey, he was having Tommy John surgery. I obviously felt bad for him, but I was like, that might have just changed our program because I honestly believe Cade would not have come to school had he not had that injury in high school. And thank God he did, so we're excited about Marcos, but I think he's a future star, future starter. It's a name you and Joe and the boys are going to be talking about a lot.
Yeah. So what we're thinking. So when you get those players like that, I mean, I recall last year during the fall, we're chatting and you're talking about Curiel, and you just knew immediately. And some guys they need a little more acclimation time, and then some guys you just know. Uh, what's that process like? Do you know as soon as they're there, or does it click halfway through fall, or sometimes it's spring? Where does that typically land?
I think it's different for every guy. I think something I'm proud of, we've done a great job of playing freshmen when they're ready here. And that's kind of abnormal in our league right now. And it's just the way that it is with college baseball being old. I look for, simple things. And it's like, Derek came in last year and knew he wasn't necessarily promised anything, but he basically asked me like, what do I need to do to crack in and be an everyday player where, I'm not going to be a defensive replacement. I'm not going to be a spot starter. I'm not going to be a platoon player.
Right.
Like, what do you need to see from me? We laid out five things and he went out and he immediately attacked them. And every time he stepped in the box in the fall, there was an attitude of competitiveness. Like, Coach Johnson is not going to give me anything. I'm going to have to earn this. And when you see a player operating like that, it catches your attention. And that's not easy to do, out here. I mean, we had our entire starting outfield from the previous year returning this year, and he cracked into that, along with, Chris Stanfield, transfer from Auburn. So when I see, makeup or competitive nature, things like that, when we've already evaluated and said the ability is good enough to play at LSU, that's usually when I know that we have something. But I was very proud of that freshman class this year. I mean, we had four pitchers that made a significant contribution. Kason Evans was a freshman All-American. Maverick Rizzi actually led our team in appearances. William Schmidt was 7-0, and Cooper Williams pitched in the regional, super regional, and in Omaha. And Kate Arambidi, was kind of our 1A catcher with Luis. So to have five guys, that really made a significant impact on a national championship team as a freshman, obviously a really good thing for us.
Yeah. Rizzi's a guy that certainly caught Joe's eye at the Cape. Had a big summer. What kind of role can he have? Can he be like a Chase Shores, come in and just kind of just overpower people?
Yeah, so we got back from Omaha before he left to go up there. You had that question of like, hey, where do you see me? And I was like, hey fella, like if you're not one of the best five pitchers in this program next year, I'm gonna be on you because I believe that it's all there. And when I say it's all there, everybody can see the 6'9" up
Mhm.
to 98, really good slider. But he throws strikes and he's competitive. And I think the mental game is there. And so I'm really excited. So yes, you could see that, he potentially could start, but my goal for him is to be one of the five most impactful pitchers on our team relative to winning. And I do it a little bit different where one of our best guys is always going to be in the bullpen, because I really believe in, what kind of team you have by whether you can win close games or not. And that's decided by your ability to hit in the clutch and your bullpen. And so a guy like Maverick, yes, he probably could start, but you could see him in that, role that we used either, Chase at the end or Case and Evans, who I believe were two of our best guys this year. Zach Cowan, I believe, is who I'm excited to have back, one
Yeah.
of our best guys. And this last year's team was probably the best team I've ever had at winning close games. And a lot of it had to do with the bullpen. And I think Maverick is primed for one of those key spots.
Mhm. So you lost some really good players to pro ball, but you got a lot of newcomers. We've talked about some freshmen. You got a lot of portal guys to pick from. Plus, guys get better as they stay in the program. Are there certain position battles that you're really, really eager to see what happens this fall?
Yeah, I think coming off a championship, you're going to lose guys. I
Mhm.
think we lost 13 in 20 after the 2023 season, or we had 13 drafted after the 2023 season. I think we had 10 players sign pro contracts and can't win it anymore unless you get to that point, kind of as I was referring to. So it leaves the next year where there's a few more questions. The things maybe on my mind is starting pitching. Now, when you're not going to replace, those two guys in terms of immediate production, I do think this staff has maybe a few more starter profile type pitchers than we did last year. And so I think the fall is going to be awesome, in terms of sorting that out. I mean, Kason Evans is a guy that we want to take from the pen, obviously, to the rotation. I mean, Zach was a starter at Wofford, for 2 years prior to coming here. We know he can do that. Great start against Arkansas in Omaha. You mentioned Jaden Newt. Been very proud of his development. It might be, his time. Cooper Williams, when we recruited Cooper, I believed he would become a starting pitcher in our program. William Schmidt, high expectations coming in last year. He was 7-0. So like in a lot of ways, he met those. He was just on the national championship team. Obviously going to be right in the thick of that discussion. Marcos Paz, you mentioned, Reagan Ricken is another freshman we're really, really high on. with three left-handers out of the portal. Danny Lackenmeyer from North Dakota State. Ryler Smart transferred from Tennessee. It was a really high-profile guy out of high school. Was coming off Tommy John. Again, we've had some success with that, so we feel like we can help him. Santi Garcia from Oregon. So Cooper Moore from Kansas, probably our most seasoned transfer pitcher that we got. So I'm excited to kind of sort that out. I think, guys will emerge to that. I think you may not quite see as many seven-inning starts as we got out of Friday and Saturday this year because that's the most I've ever seen. So you might see us cutting some games up some more. I'm looking forward to seeing how that. And then the infield defense. I think one of the things I was most proud of as a coach is how we played defense this year, especially in the infield. We broke the LSU record for fielding percentage in 2025, and then with Jared moving on, Danny moving on, and Michael Braswell moving on, like we have to sort that out. I'm really excited about the bats in that grouping, but we're going to need to play high level defense again. So there's a lot with that has to come together as well.
I know one of the things that you looked at last fall were moving guys around in the infield, certainly in the fall. You had Dickinson at multiple places and Braswell and Bylam. Where do you see some of that shaking out? Because a lot of those guys are gone. You got some portal guys with some versatility. You certainly got some returnees. What is that looking like?
Yeah, I think Milam's obviously going to be the shortstop. Like, I mean, that's the best defensive season I've ever had a shortstop play in my entire career. I think he made 5 errors, and there was a long stretch from like earlier in the season until I think he made an error in the Super Regional, and it was like, whoa, like we haven't seen that in a long time. So we feel good about that's a great starting point is to have him back at shortstop. The rest of it, there's a lot of sorting out to do. We're excited about a couple of the guys that we brought in the portal, Braden Simpson from High Point, Seth Dardar from Kansas State, and certainly Trent Caraway from Oregon State. That was a big piece for us to be able to add. How that shakes out with the second base, third base, but I like some of the guys we have back too, like John Pearson, I think is a hitter. We need to kind of figure out the defensive part. Tanner Reeves started a lot of games for us last year, and I think can play second base, third base, can also play in the outfield. I think he's a very valuable piece of this team that maybe people don't talk about as much.
Mhm.
And then at first base, Zach York from Grand Canyon, we were excited to grab him with the mix of Pearson, Simpson, Dardar. So we got a lot of sorting out, and that's with a couple good freshmen too. Ethan Claus from Las Vegas. He's a guy we're really going to develop. There's a lot of natural ability in him. He's a left-handed hitter, great mover, done a great job this summer in the strength and conditioning piece. And then Jack Ruckert, who's from Catholic High here in Baton Rouge, does a lot of things really, really well. Both those guys are left-handed hitters too. So I think I got everybody that we have on the roster in the infield in there, but that's going to be a key thing to watch as we go. Mason Braun is a first baseman outfielder, might be the most advanced hitter that we're bringing in this class of freshmen that
Mhm.
I could see being a guy that people around here are talking about as one of those key guys in the program, for a long time. I think on my last board I had him like as a outfielder and then a first baseman, but he's really good around the bag at first base too, and he can rake. So I'm excited about that group.
Yeah, it's lots of options. So, any scheduling nuggets that you can share
Yeah.
for the fall or the spring?
Yeah. So in the fall, we're gonna go play Samford again in Biloxi.
Mhm.
That was a great deal for our team. We made it like a 2-day trip, scrimmaged in there on Saturday, which we're gonna do again ourselves and then our squad, and then played Samford with Coach David on Sunday. Played like a million innings last year. We'll probably do the same
I'm
thing
there.
again.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go over to Southeastern Louisiana. They did a great job in recruiting in the transfer portal. I like getting our players out of here
Mhm.
in the fall and just kind of focus on the baseball part of it in the game. Spring, we open at home, I think, with Milwaukee. And then we're going to go to Jacksonville for one of those peak event tournaments the second weekend. Good schedule: Indiana, Notre Dame, Central Florida. And then we have Northeastern and Dartmouth coming in for our own tournament week 3, and then Sacramento State week 4, and then the usual suspects on the Tuesdays. All the great programs in Louisiana. A couple good ones though. I think we have Creighton coming in on Tuesday. So excited about our schedule this year.
Yeah. So we kick off the chat, our chat today, just kind of how you assess the program. Are there certain things that really stick with you that you're really proud of that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think, coming into a place that I had only been one time, I'd only been to Louisiana one time, and that was for the 2016 regional at Louisiana Lafayette. And making some great friends here in the community. I mean, I always believed Southern hospitality was a real thing, even though being a California guy, it totally is. And being a big part of what LSU is in this baseball program. The friendship I've made with Coach Burtman is I can't even put that into words. Like to be able, I'm having dinner with him tonight, actually, to be able to do that on a regular basis. And then, to stare down like a thing of impossible expectations to meet, and to win 2 championships and add to the legacy of that and put us in a really good position, going forward. It's like I said, it was a challenge and opportunity in my life, and to see players, ascend to their dream of being major leaguers, almost in the way that, Georgia football or Alabama football is doing right now with NFL draft picks while winning championships at the college level. It's kind of the model we're trying to build this thing off of, and that's what we're doing right now.
Well, good stuff. Well, Jay, thanks so much for filling in for Joe. I think you did a good job. If you need to come back, if Joe needs to take a couple days off, we can work this out. But always great to catch up with you. Lots to talk about. Love the schedule. I know that coming up, last year's schedule probably wasn't what you wanted, and this year it looks like, man, you guys are going to really put on a show for us. So thanks for your time, and for everyone else, appreciate you uh, joining Jay and I on the highway to Hoover, and we'll talk to you next time.